I'll get the obvious thing out of the way. The most obvious thing, I don't know why they've used the pi symbol, the very old Greek letter, in their new car name. I've never seen that before. So I would imagine that we can refer to the car without it and probably just call it the Dongfeng 007, maybe. So the pi symbol is recognized in mathematics as representing the constant pi, if you know what the constant pi is, which is fundamental in geometry, especially when you talk about circles. And if I'm being completely honest, I don't see the connection with why would you want to use that in a car name. So maybe they're just trying to be edgy or in some crazy way progressive or something like that. So a few weeks ago I did a video, if you remember, and it was about the new brand from China called Dongfeng. It's not actually a new brand, but from a Western standpoint, you've probably not heard of it, but they've been making cars for something like 50 years. So if you're like me and you like cheap practical cars that are more more cheap, more practical, more affordable, then you should probably know about Dongfeng, because they do make actual decent cars, with reasonable figures, not like 20 horsepower cars for £4,000 or something like that. So I'm a fan of the BYD Seal, as you'll probably be aware, and as yet it's not available around the globe, although it is in some places. And it is confirmed for export from China in big numbers. The Dongfeng that I last spoke about, it actually beats the BYD Seal on paper, so it's quite an interesting car. I'll put that in the link below, in the section below the notes under the video, so you can click on it and have a look. Maybe it's not as good looking though, but it is on paper a very good car. So here is a quick picture of the car I'm talking about today. So before I talk about it, I'm Ben Alexander and I make EV news videos. So with regards to one or two of my last videos, I think most people agree with my observations, because I'm not exactly saying crazy things. And just from reading the comments, most people seem to agree or don't really mind either way what I say. But then there was one comment that struck me as just a bit off. So a person wrote that they didn't agree with my opening statement about people being generally keen or to buy a used or a cheap EV. And they indicated at that point, I suppose, they stopped watching the video, which that's fine if you're bored. I encourage you to stop watching and go do something else, and don't waste your time watching something you're not interested in. But if it's simply because you disagree with a basic comment or opinion, then that tells us, I think, is that you're wanting to find yourself on a video that serves to mirror your opinions, like a one-sided echo chamber. And I don't think that's a great place to be, honestly. So I don't think I make really sweeping statements or say outlandish, crazy comments. These are just fairly basic observations, honestly. If a car's cheap and it seems pretty good on paper, I'm not exactly being crazy by saying that. But nevertheless, I honestly don't mind if people leave all sorts of comments. I think you should have that chance to voice your opinions. It's equally as valid as my opinion. So please go for your life in the comment section. But apart from that, loads of people read the comments way before I've even gotten to them. So this new car by Dongfeng that I'm talking about in today's video starts at around 20,000 euros, and it's beautiful. It's a really beautiful car, I think, and the battery options are fantastic. I also like that they offered it in a range extended version, because that will be fantastic for a lot of people that drive a lot. So and the battery in the range extender is still 29 kilowatt hours. I think it's just under, it's like 28 point something, with a 1.5 petrol engine. So if you're in a bonkers massive country like Australia, then that's a really useful thing, because you don't need to worry about charging. And I know some of the people that watch my videos are from Australia, so I just ask you one thing. Can you put in the comment section and tell other people just how expensive it can be in Australia, because it is bonkers. A few times I've driven between, say, Brisbane and Melbourne, and that's like a few days' drive if you stop for sleep. I know one of you live in South Australia. I think a chap called Stephen, or Stephen, if I remember right. And I'm sure around that neck of the woods, if you drive north or east, there's quite a bit of nothingness before you get to like Melbourne from South Australia, for example, and especially if you go west for you to Perth from South Australia, there's just like a lot of. Anyway, so I'm sure you know what it's like if you do a few hours and you don't see anything. So in the pure EV version, which is the primary version of the car, that's kind of what this is with the range extender as a sort of bolt-on. As in, it's an EV, but they also made a hybrid petrol version with a 29 kilowatt hour battery. The battery has two sizes, so it has a 56.86 kilowatt hour battery version with 200 horsepower or so, and a range of apparently 530 kilometers CLTC, which is the Chinese one. Quite a lofty, usually. Realistically, you'll get probably 450 to 470. Unless it's winter, in which case it might be a bit less. The motor, rear mounted too, which I think is nice. And I guess these days I don't really need to say that it's rear mounted. We can just use that as a default probably, because I think it's pretty standard these days with a few exceptions, such as the BYD Dolphin. The next battery, there are actually two models with a bigger battery now. So there were three models in total in pure EV form. The first one was a smaller battery. The next one, 70.26 kilowatt hour, 270 horsepower, 0 to 60 miles per hour, or 0 to 100 kilometers per hour, 6.8 seconds for the first one. And then this one with the bigger battery and more power is 5.8 seconds, so it's quite nippy. The range, 630 kilometers CLTC. CLTC is basically worthless because it's so lofty. I don't think anyone ever gets what, unless you drive 60 kilometers per hour, I don't think you'll ever get it. So you need to know, I think roughly some people in New Zealand and Australia, for example, I think they have I think you could say you can take 15% off. And then that's roughly what you're actually at for the WLTP. And then even the WLTP is a bit tricky to get sometimes. So you'll end up with maybe 500, 550 kilometers on that one. And then the fastest version, which is a beast, I think, it has the same battery with 70.26 kilowatt hours, but it has two motors. And the fastest version is a bit of a beast, I think, and it has the same battery with 70.26 kilowatt hours, but literally just two motors. So identical motors, and the front and back motor, identical numbers, identical motor. It's exactly the same, and also the torque and the horsepower exactly the same, so it just doubles the numbers. 540 horsepower, so 640 newton meters of torque, and that does 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 3.9 seconds. If that's your cup of tea, which it isn't for me, I'm much more happier with a BYD Seal with 75 horsepower or something. So the range is 540 CLTC. And I believe, but I can't really confirm, that they don't use any sort of torque vectoring, not even the type to make it go a bit quicker around corners, for example, but more for cruising on the motorway when manufacturers want to make a car more efficient and it's got a smaller front motor and a bigger back one. The front is the default because it has to. They would typically make it spin faster, and so therefore it's more efficient. And then the back one is more for extra oomph, basically. Also, it should just be more for handling as well. Having more power at the back is actually just better because you can actually put that power down and it feels nicer to drive like that. On the biggest battery version, it apparently takes 26 minutes to charge from 30% up to 80%, and I'm not sure about the actual charge speed. I couldn't find that, and I don't know anything about the charging curve on a Dongfeng or on any of their cars, but that's on my to-do list. But if you do know, please put it in the comments. I'll be checking for that in the next couple of days to see if anyone did actually figure that out. The batteries all use the AC as well, the air conditioning, for proper liquid cooling, but I don't know if that also covers the hybrid battery, which I imagine at 29 kilowatt hours, it probably does have some cooling on there, of course. Usually on hybrids, if you're lucky enough to get a hybrid with cooling on it, it's just going to be a fan basically to cool the battery down. But generally they don't use liquid cooling, and they're using using the air conditioning on a hybrid battery. So the brand Dongfeng, basically priding itself on being a cheaper and more affordable company, although this car isn't very small, to be honest. It's 4.88 meters long versus the BYD Seal, which is 4.8 on the nose. It is cheaper though, very, very cheap. And the BYD clearly, the BYD brand, sorry, they put their effort in to genuinely, to actually make proper, genuinely well-made cars, not just on the surface, but throughout. And I can't say the same for all brands, but I know that for sure with BYD, especially the electronics, which is a big thing. Because if you're going to buy a car full of electronics, you want it to be from a company that is known for having good electrics, of course. You don't have to, but for me, and I think for a lot of people, it's a bit of a prerequisite. Dongfeng is a manufacturer owned by the Chinese government, and it is based in Wuhan, and it was established in 1969, and it ranks as China's third largest of the big four state-owned car manufacturers, which include SAIC Motor Company, Ford Group, Dongfeng Motor Company, and Shangan Automobile, which you may not have heard of those. And for any of you that haven't been in a car as well by a company like SAIC, for example, you should probably go check out the MG4 for reference, I think, because they are really beautiful. So it's quite likely that this Dongfeng is going to be a very nice car, I think. The new Dongfeng currently is China only, but it may go abroad. I really hope it does. So I just thought I need to get that in at the end before I forget, because you can't go to France and buy a Dongfeng at this point in time. So thank you for watching. Like I said earlier, I always read your comments. Please feel free to say anything you like. And yeah, thank you for watching and sticking to the end.